over the next few months, I'll be chatting with a number of different people throughout the animal rights movement, from all walks of life, all types of professions, but all with one thing in common, and that is their desire to help non-human animals and their lives through this very human-centric world and all the terrible things that we do to them. And we'll be helping them in that respect, in advocating for them and for those animals. And I hope that you'll share in these interviews and share them widely as well on your social media. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these people are running sanctuaries and things like that, and they need your help, and they need the help of the broader community too. And that brings me to my first interview, because I can't think of anybody who I'd love to talk with more, or who should kick off this series, than the amazing Pam Ahern from Edgars Mission, who, those of you who are in the animal rights community, need no introduction at all. But for those of you who are joining us perhaps for the first time, Pam established a farm animal sanctuary, I think in 2003 was the first, and has rescued thousands of farm animals, providing with love and safety, and forever homes, which is a term that a lot of us would normally only really associate with, say, domesticated animals that we might have rescued, or animals from the racing industry, such as greyhound racing. We tend not to think of rescuing farm animals because they're part of what I term those others, those lives that are really unseen and unknown to the rest of the community and the rest of the world. Look, Pam, thanks so much for joining us and chatting with us today. How are you guys all at Edgars Mission going through the current crisis?
Well, for me, it lives at the sanctuary all the time, and my life is dedicated to the protection of these animals. It hasn't impacted upon me so much personally that much, because I pretty much social isolate every day living here. But in terms of the broader operation of the sanctuary, we have been impacted quite significantly. Very early on, we were one of the first places to halt all our tours and visitors to the sanctuary, and all our volunteer induction days were cancelled, volunteer information sessions were cancelled, corporate volunteer days were cancelled. Even our open days this Sunday would be celebrating 17 years from the day when I found Edgar, which is our Found Edgar Day, and that's had to be cancelled. So we've been impacted upon that way. Even doing our outreach events, we've impacted upon that. School visits to the sanctuary, we've been impacted upon that as well. So it has had quite an impact on the operation of the sanctuary. In combating that, we've turned to social media. We're doing a lot more live broadcasts to keep our supporters and all those who love Edgars Mission near and dear to us, so they can see what's going on at the sanctuary.
And I can well imagine, I mean, to run a sanctuary of the size of Edgars Mission and the scope would be an enormous financial responsibility. And I don't think people understand, well, a lot of people perhaps don't understand just exactly the size of that type of commitment, what that requires in terms of financial commitment, and what it requires in terms of having volunteers come and doing some of the work. Like, it's just an enormous body of work that has to be done. And so, like, I'll say right off the bat, if people who are listening to this or watching it, if you can at all help, please go onto Edgar's page and their website and donate, and don't just donate to give them a one-off. Commit yourself to give a monthly donation. That would go a far way to helping out during this time. And we can only hope that restrictions get somewhat lifted soon, so that you can return to life somewhat more.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I often say, if I had have read my job description that I do today, 17 years ago, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because there's no way known I would have thought I was up for the challenges that I face on a daily basis here. And it is the enormous responsibility that I have for the animals in my care. But now I have staff who rely on me as well to ensure that, the funds are coming in, that we can pay them, and we can also feed the animals and provide everything for them. And we have 450 animals here at the sanctuary, which in terms of looking after the animals is a lot. But in terms of animals suffering in Australia or worldwide, it's such a very, very minuscule snapshot of that. And that's why our advocacy work is so incredibly important, giving people a chance to meet these animals and learn about their lives. And that has been severely impacted because people can't come and visit the animals.
Yeah, and I don't think you can underestimate that either. I mean, I was lucky enough to be on the committee, the parliamentary committee that came and visited Edgars Mission as part of the animal activism inquiry. And when we walked around there, and these were people who live a very different life to most of the rest of us. You know, people who are cloistered in that political bubble, and also their own spectrum of life outside of that environment doesn't really, or hasn't, they've not really come into contact with these animals as people, you know, as individuals. And that the members of that committee who came on that day and walked around, they definitely were very much impacted by the people that they met there, the beings that they met there and their stories, and they left with a very, very different view in mind than what they came in with, I think.
And that's very true to, you know, how the sanctuary came into being. I didn't get Edgar 17 years ago and say I was going to start this sanctuary and change the world. You know, we got him for a quirky idea for a photo shoot when we were working on the Save Babe campaign with Animals Australia. We needed a pig for a photo shoot. And the photo shoot went so well with James Cromwell that we decided we'd do an action on the steps of Parliament House, where James would march up the steps of Parliament House with Edgar Allan Pig by his side and demand a better deal for pigs. And that was great. And then suddenly I realized, actually, I really got to teach this pig to walk on a lead. But I realized you actually don't teach pigs anything, you ask them. And so Edgar and I went down to the park to go with my little dog E.T. And I had Edgar on one side and E.T. on the other. And people just came from everywhere to marvel at Edgar and his unique brand of pigginess. And they were rubbing his tummy, going, go, 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 go. And people were interacted and they were engaged and they were asking me questions about the pig. And that got me thinking that the best ambassadors, the very, very best ambassadors for changing the way that people view farmed animals were the animals themselves. I could speak till I'm blue in the face to people's minds, but Edgar, he spoke to their heart. And he reminded them that's where we should keep these animals, not lower down in our stomach. And the profound change that I've seen people go through when they meet these animals. Just this morning, while I was waiting to go online, there was an email came from a little boy who came earlier this year who brought his father along to the sanctuary. And as a result of meeting the animals here at the sanctuary, the father no longer eats these animals. And that was through nothing we've actually said, just meeting these animals, seeing them as a unique, beautiful individuals who just want to share the sunshine, just want to hang out with their friends. When it's cold, they want to be warm, and when it's hot, they want to be cool. Same need for food and water that we have. They look a little bit different. And, you know, when we see those differences is really an arbitrary thing that we've just drawn this line in the sand. It's not in keeping with the goodness of our human heart. We really don't want to cause harm and suffering to others. You know, we abhor violence. And it's a really counterfeit thought that the society has when we say, well, we care about animals. You know, we've enshrined it in legislation, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. But that doesn't protect all animals. This is our problem, and actually getting people to see beyond that. And I remember I was growing up as a child, I thought, well, this is great, society cares about animals. And then I started to learn about the way we discriminate against them based simply on the shape that they come in. And it really doesn't stand up for criticism and critique, that how can we actually justify the way one looks to determine how we treat them. And that's been a determinant of our society's ethical progress, that we've actually broken down those barriers of those that we saw different. And I think animals now, as Justice Michael Kirby, when he was at the High Court Justice, said that, you know, the way we treat animals is our next great social justice movement. And I really think he's on the money there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people identify with particular animals, you know, that some people have favourites and those sorts of things. But what strikes me about when I visited Edgars is that I can walk around there and observe just all these different personalities. It's just extraordinary. I mean, I love watching chickens. I can find just sitting there and watching them go about their business is very relaxing, you know, and amusing and all sorts of different things, you know, watching their personalities and their, you know, their social structures and all that sort of thing at play. And it's exactly like watching human society. There is no difference at all, you know, and then you move on to pigs and you move on to cows and things, and you see all of these same things at play in different ways, but with the same underlying, you know, structure of recognition of another being in that space with themselves, and that they'll interact with them in some way. It's just, yeah, it's extraordinary for me that, you know, people can even have like things like chickens in their own backyard, and then that night they can sit down to consume the body of one. And it's just, I really I fail to get these days, because like many other people, I used to eat meat and bodies of animals like other people, and I changed because I made that connection, and I struggle with people, how people can't, you know.
It is that moment of honesty we have, and I remember having a discussion with my nieces many years ago, and they were trying to tell me that the chickens that they ate were different from the chickens that Edgars Mission rescued, and they thought I was lying when I was telling them this. And I thought, well, gosh, they're going to be in for a real shock, and their parents too, when those children actually realise they've been lied to. And this is the thing, that we have been lied to. We've been sold an incredible lie that these animals don't feel pain, suffering, and don't have their own individual wants and needs. And we've allowed our might to trump their right to live. And I think that's really, it does get you here. And some people actually go to that default denial, because it can be quite daunting as people who love animals and care passionately about social justice, and to realise that so many of the choices that we've made in our life have been incompatible with that. But it takes courage to change, but it also takes compassion. Not only compassion for the animals, but compassion to ourselves, that, okay, we might have done something that's inconsistent with what we believe in, but we can change. It's one of the most wonderful things, that there's never a point in our life where we can't say, I'm not going to be a part of it anymore. And I think when we recognise that, that really is a key to a better world for everyone, not just animals, but for people and the planet. And we only have to look at, what's happening now with COVID-19 and how that came about, the not caring about the choices we make and how that impacts upon others.
And that's a really fascinating point too, and it leads me, segues very well into the next question I was going to ask you, in that we measure as human beings, as the human species, we measure our compassion in lots of different ways, and one of those ways is that we mark our humanity by marking special occasions, like we have Christmas and Easter and all these sorts of things, and we celebrate those, and part of that is that we speak about compassion for all human beings, compassion for, for our brothers and sisters, et cetera, and we have things like Father's Day and Mother's Day, and we've got Mother's Day is this Sunday, and there's been a lot of debate about during these COVID-19 restrictions that for one day we should shut down all of these restrictions that we've got and allow people to visit their mothers and grandmothers, etc., and then go back to the restrictions the next day. Right? It just seems sort of counterintuitive to do that when there's a certain risk, and that to think that the risk is somehow disappears for a single day and then comes back again the next. But that's that strangeness of human beings, and that we think we can do that. But I guess I was leading up in a very roundabout way to asking you about the campaign that you've been running in the lead up to Mother's Day, All Mother's Day campaign. Can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what that's all about?
It's a wonderful way, and you gave a beautiful segue into that as well, of actually thinking about how strong our bonds are with our mothers, to be with our mothers, to need to be with our mothers. And I have been privileged to witness the bonds between the mothers of different species for many, many years now. And I realise how incredibly strong that is, and the lengths that mothers will go to protect their babies, and how our society has callously and legally disregarded those bonds. And this Mother's Day, we're actually asking everyone to consider mothers of all species, shapes and sizes, and remind them when it comes to their babies, they love them just the same. Just this week, we've actually been privileged to witness the birth of 2 baby goats to a rescued female goat that came in. We have a strict no breeding policy here at Edgars Mission, because there's so many animals out there in the world that need rescue. We don't need to add to it as much as we love baby animals. But if animals do arrive here pregnant, well, they do slip under our radar. And Morticia gave birth to these 2 beautiful, beautiful little baby goats, and to see the bond that she has with those 2 little babies, and she'll call out to them. And just seeing the babies, just when first they were baby kids, and then their personalities coming out over the last few days, has just been incredible, and just realises how rich and emotional the worlds of these animals are, and how we have just desensitised ourselves from recognising that. because the ramifications of recognizing these animals having strong bonds for their babies and their babies for their mothers allows us to do these things we do to animals. In the absence of actually that knowledge, it makes it comfortable to do what we do to animals. And I think we as human beings, as intelligent species we are, is incumbent upon us to start thinking about the choices that we make and how they impact upon these beings that don't have the power that we do to control their lives. You know, all of the choices that they make in their life are really dictated by ours. And they're always heavily weighted in our interests.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is not the first time, though, that you've had rescued animals that have given birth that you... How is it? And I'm reminded, and I'm clearly, you know what I'm talking about here, and that's the story of Clarabelle and Valentine. I wonder if you would just share that story with everybody.
It's an incredible story. So Clarabelle is a one-time dairy production animal, and how her rescue even came about is over the years we've rescued many baby calves from the dairy industry, and it's surprising when we tell people the story that cows don't just produce milk. Cows produce milk. No, they don't. They're like mammals, and they will only produce milk and start to produce milk in the latter stage of their pregnancy when their body starts to prepare for the birth of their offspring, and they will produce milk to feed their baby, just as we humans who are mammals do the same thing. And then when that baby is born, they're taken away from their mother, and it's quite a difficult process to do. If you speak to anyone in the dairy industry in a moment of honesty, they will tell you it's one of the worst days of their life when they have to take those babies away from their mothers. And rescuing many baby calves over the years, I always felt terribly sad for the mothers. You know, these mothers have continually had that done to them year after year after year, and then their reward for that is to be sent off to slaughter. And as my way of saying sorry to these mothers, I wanted to rescue a mother cow from the dairy industry. And I'd made friends with a person who worked in the dairy industry. I told them, like, if ever the opportunity comes up, I would love to rescue a mama cow. And the opportunity came up, and they rescued 2 mama cows that day, and they came to live at the sanctuary. It was just beautiful. It was like, wow, I've got the opportunity now. These beautiful cows, they can live out their life in peace. They were pregnant. They were being trucked off to slaughter, and they were pregnant. They got to give birth at a sanctuary. And they got to keep, I'm even getting choked up telling the story. They got to keep their babies. The first cow that we rescued, Daphne, was the most gentle Frisian cow. And the day that she gave birth to her baby, she turned into the Godzilla of cows. We went to go into the paddock with her to get photos of the babies, you know, and help and do all those other things. And she just said, no way, Jose. She just stabbed her foot and like, go ahead, make my day. And we just backed completely off because she wanted that baby. Yep. Just one baby, she wanted to keep that baby, and she got to keep her baby. Clarabelle, this beautiful doe-eyed Jersey cow, was due to calf late February, and she was always first up for her food. And then she started to get a little bit slow, wasn't always first up. And well, you know, she's getting to the end of her last trimester, and the baby's getting really big. But then I noticed just one teat was engorged, just one teat, and I thought, oh, hello, something's going on here. And I followed her because when she'd been coming up for her food, she was turning around, looking behind her. And she'd actually given birth to her baby in our forest. And I found the little baby, this doe-eyed, beautiful baby Jersey calf, just looking up at me, blinking. And I thought, wow. And then I looked at the baby calf. She wasn't a newborn calf. She was several days old. Her umbilical cord was completely dry. The little capsules that cover their hoofs when they're born so they can passage gently out through the mother's birth canal, they'd been well worn. She'd been working on this oil for several days. And every day after that, I would go and check the little baby to make sure that she was okay. But Clarabelle kept moving her to a different position in the forest every day because she didn't want us to take the baby away from her. And we made a video about it called Finding Valentine, because it was Valentine's Day that I found the baby, and we wanted to honour that lovely bond between mothers and her calf. And we tell people about this story, and you know, people will say, oh, but you know, your mother cows, you know, they hide them from predators. Exactly. They hide them from the predator. The greatest predator that mother dairy cows face are humans, because they're the ones that routinely take those babies away from them. Yep. Clarabelle and Valentine are still together to this day. Valentine is so big, she's bigger than her mama, but they are always together. They'll groom one another, and just that love is still palpable. And that story and seeing those two together has done so much to advance the cause of mother cows, and to really make people think about, yeah, well, I might love dairy, but Clarabelle loves her baby 10 times more.
And it's just incredible. Like, that's not the first time I've heard that story, and it's just so beautiful. And also to hear that the other story, you know, about the other cow, you know, stamping her feet, you know, like
Yeah.
going to protect a child at all costs.
Absolutely,
you know.
at all costs, and there was no way known that we could approach that animal, and to see the change in the personality and the demeanor of this animal, who, you know, she knew us, and we were deeply offended that this animal, you know, thought we were the bad people. But why did she have any reason to think that time was going to be any different from every other time her baby was taken away from her?
Exactly, and that, and in that essence, yeah, in that essence, I think this is the connection that people need to understand and make. You know, this is not an animal reaction versus a human reaction here. This is a universal reaction of a living sentient being trying to protect their child. And if you stuck human beings in that paddock, or if you stuck any other species of animal in that paddock, the reactions would be exactly the same in both circumstances. That the mother would be trying to protect their child at all costs, whether it's through hiding them or physical defense. And in that essence, I think that's why people need to understand that non-human animals are no different to us in that respect. Open that door and have a look, and then have a look at all the other behavioural aspects that are the same as us, and make that connection.
And this is the wonderful thing that I see happening more and more every day. It's not just we humans or animal advocates are saying these things. We have science now informing us that these are factual things. You know, there's a biological evolutionary basis for these animals caring deeply about their family and friends. You know, we know the value of community, and so do animals too. And it's time that we expanded our circle of compassion to include all the beings that live on this planet, because that is what is going to ensure the survival of all of us. We can't continue living in our bubble, all about me. You know, and this is one thing that's coming out of COVID. We are, that well-worn phrase, we are in this together, and we are in this with animals. It's their world too.
Absolutely. And if we had that bit much more of respect for their lives, then perhaps we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now. Look, Pam, if you could leave everyone listening in and watching with one thought today, what would it be?
You know what this is going to be. And it's just a beautiful mantra to live by. It's our mantra, and it transcends everything. If we could live happy and healthy lives without harming others, why wouldn't we? What compelling reason have we got to harm others?
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you so much for being part of this today. And as I said at the start, I can't think of anyone more appropriate to have been the first to kick this series off. The work you've done and that you continue to do with Edgars Mission over the years, and what's going to be obviously in front of you in the future as well. We can't, as a community, thank you enough. And I look forward to, post-COVID, another expedition up there to sit down and watch those chickens.
Beautiful. Thank you so incredibly much for everything that you do for animals. It buoys our spirits to know that we've got someone like you in Parliament speaking for them.
Oh, cheers. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Namaste.